Hi folks, welcome back to the Cannabis Corner. I'm your host, Kerry Burns. When we look back through the last 43 years since the Controlled Substance Act came into law under our illustrious President Nixon, I want to take a look tonight at the economy of how much has been spent in the efforts to try to keep cannabis illegal and to arrest all the people who wanted to use it or express their own free will and freedom of choice of smoking it. But of course, the greatest loss that's been experienced in that 43-year period, of course, is the human life that has had to die as a result of the drug wars and the drug cartel violence, and also violent deaths of inmates that have been sent to prisons over the years that either were gang raped in prison and died from contracting AIDS, or were just murdered in there for some insignificant violent act, that was going on in the prison. They just got caught up in it. But in this time period here in the United States, we've incarcerated over 30 million people for cannabis and cannabis possession, and the cost of this. I mean, I've heard some politicians, they were scoffing and they said, "Oh well, our DEA budget and the drug war budget each year is only about $25 billion, and that's just such a small amount compared to what we spend, a lot of the money on." But that's really just a small splinter of a smidgen of what they actually spend on this drug war. Yeah, that may be the DEA budget, $20 to $25 billion a year, and we also know for a fact that 85% of that money is spent right there on the border trying to stop marijuana from coming into the United States, but the costs go far beyond the human life, and of course we can't put a price on that. We can't put a price on all the suffering that the families, not only south of the border but here in this country too, American citizens that were illegally locked up because of this stupid law, but there's so much more even than that, even though that's the worst. But we can't put a price figure on those. It's nothing that we can really, put a calculator to and calculate how much money, that's worth, because there's not a figure. And in those families' eyes, you'll never, there's not an amount that they would take, that they would trade for their loved ones. And so when we start to look at that, of course, that's the most serious part of this whole issue about chasing after pot and telling people that they can't use it and all of that, and having this DEA in the first place to even enforce such a stupid idea. But when you go to looking at the numbers, though, the amount of money that's being spent, and over the years it's been an incredible amount. I mean, just the incarceration alone in the last 43 years of just drug offenders alone has exceeded $1.5 trillion. If you take the amount of money that's spent on law enforcement and all the combined budgets that go against eradicating cannabis throughout the United States in this 43 years has exceeded $500 billion. And then you look at the cost of what Homeland Security has been spending just in the last 10 years when it was formed, and their budget, and that's pushing up to around $200 billion. And then you look at the productivity of the 30 million people that were incarcerated because of cannabis, that they couldn't do their jobs, they couldn't be productive members of society. You look at the amount of money that was lost to society and all, and that exceeds over $1 trillion just on a normal, fair minimum wage, 40-hour week job for those 30 million people during that 43-year reign of time when that many people were incarcerated. The ultimate loss of all that, of those people not being productive citizens in society because they were being locked up in jail for an herb, basically an herb that's probably the safest herb on the planet if you really look at what it takes, the amount of it takes for you to ingest, for it to actually cause a death on you. There's never been a death recorded because of that, because it's impossible to ingest that amount. And even a hardcore cannabis user of today, in his entire lifetime, if he smoked his entire adult life and lived to be 75, would never smoke that amount in that entire period. So it's a joke, and nobody's ever even been visited at the emergency room for cannabis overdose or anything even related to it, or any kind of, yet we spend all of this money, and we're talking about $3.5 trillion $3.5 to $4 trillion that's been spent in the span of 43 years. And we don't, this amount of money, that doesn't even begin to address the amount of money that we've lost because we've kept the hemp industry gone. I mean, if you look at just the period of 1937 to 1970, since they outlawed hemp and all, at the time in the early 30s, this was over $1 billion a year crop, which, in the 30s, post-depression and post-prohibition too, that to think that amount of money was being brought in an industry and that was just snuffed out. I mean, look at the economic impact of that alone. And then you add the last 40 years of the amount of money that we spent. So we've spent, in excess $3.5–4 trillion in the last 40 years. Don't tell them how much if you go back to the early 30s, but particularly in this, since the 60s Singles Narcotics Treaty became entrenched there with the United Nations and, of course, our country and nearly 100 others. And they placed cannabis on this, and of course it ultimately brought about our own Controlled Substance Act nearly 10 years later. But all of this has been to promote this, what I call just blatant stupidity. And here we have this plant, this tremendous textile, this incredible plant that, yes, one of the things it does is produce flower tops that produce a euphoria that makes you feel good. But gee, I mean, God, I know that's its only side effect that we can say that just is, oh, you got to look out for that. But this plant is a tremendous textile, and the fact that we wage all this BS and spend all these trillions of dollars and let this industry just slide right on by us like it's just not even there, it's just mindless stupidity. And the people that are running this country and the government and this drug enforcement agency and what they're doing, to go to these lengths and all it's doing really is just wasting a bunch of money for nothing, and we're thwarting this industry that could really pull us out of these doldrums economically that this country is just about to really we're going to go beyond the cliff. We're going to go into the abyss of no return if we don't hurry up and do something quick. But this is a new industry that could have that happen. But isn't it like the government, though, to spend $3 or $4 trillion, just throw money out there that's never going to be brought back when the whole time you're trying to enforce this stupidity? We could have had this industry going that would have made 7 times that amount of money in that span of time. It just baffles the imagination to think that they would. Where are the people in this country that control the money and stuff? What are y'all just so entrenched in everything else that you're afraid to let this happen, or what is it? We really would like to know that. The cannabis users in the United States would like to know, what are y'all thinking? I mean, put aside the fact that somebody can get high on marijuana, even though it's never caused any problems for anybody, and people function normally day to day, day in, day out, have been for decades and decades in this country, smoking it and all that. Where are y'all coming off to keep pulling this farce drug war, this entire enforcement scheme, and like it's just this dangerous narcotic drug and all of that? All that's, y'all have fabricated all of that, and we would just like to know, what are y'all thinking? What this waste of this kind of money that we have to borrow, we don't even have, and then on top of that, we're going to let this industry go by that could be putting people back to work and all. It just baffles my mind, and I'm not even really a smart person. There's plenty of people out there that are smart economists and all that, and simple math. This isn't rocket science. But what's going on in America that we would let this happen? What's going on in America that we would have to even vote to make cannabis legal in these 2 states, Colorado and Washington, but we have to do it in a way that we just, bend over and take it up to what with all these regulations they want to enforce by doing it. It doesn't even make sense. Yet alcohol and cigarettes just flow out there in the streets like there's no tomorrow. Come on, okay? Yeah, we would like to know. The cannabis smokers of America would like to know, what justifies this huge waste of money and the stupidity that keeps going on that prevents this hemp industry from happening? We would love to know that. Could one of you brain pods up there in Washington, one of you congressmen, one of you senators, President Obama, one of y'all, could y'all possibly, for just 1 minute, address the United States of America and let us know why this stupidity is going on? We really would appreciate it. And I thank all of y'all for joining the Cannabis Corner.